Hello, we're here.
Hello. If we start including games that should be Final Fantasies, we'll be here forever.
We will be here forever. The cave story does hit very very strongly in a similar way. Love that cave story. Love that Final Fantasy. Two
You
great
eat
tastes.
crystals. That's a
Yeah,
that's all you need for Final Fantasy crystal consumption.
but hey, everybody, we finally made it to the third dimension. Final Fantasy
hmm
the games are in 3D now, except for when they're not. But uh, to mark this occasion, we're going to talk about the games we've gone through so far, and maybe make a little list of them, make a little ranking list of them. That before I make that visible.
Can't open the website. That's your private gallery of butt pictures.
Yeah.
Can't show that off on stream. You'll get in trouble.
So first off, try to make this as big enough on screen as I can. First off, just as a review of the scope of this project, and I'm gonna let me probably share this on
Yes, I would
Discord.
like to see what we're doing.
Yeah, I forgot that I can share Firefox.
You can share anything if you want.
Sort of the scope of this project. The games in chronological order, their spin-offs, their sequels. This big bold maybe for mobile games we may take a look at in some capacity at some point. At least on like look at YouTube videos or something. Probably not all of these. Probably
Was
not
there a
most of
straight up
these.
mobile game that ended up being called Agito? They used that
Yes.
name for something?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it is a like sort of sequel or prequel kind of thing to Type 0.
Makes sense.
But yeah, Agito it did end up being a mobile game. I don't know if it got an English release or not, a global release or not. I don't remember. Um, there's been a lot of fucking mobile games. We're not gonna be able to
Hmm.
look at all of them. Opera Omnia is one I'd like to look at, but that's a pretty hefty one. A lot of stuff there. Before the most likely one we're going to look at is Before Crisis. That's really the most likely mobile game we'll look at. Is we'll look at Before
Yeah,
Crisis
that's
after we get
that's
through 7.
probably the most interesting one.
Since that one was like kind of their first mobile game, it was it's also like from a time. It's a more interesting time to look at mobile games when it came out. I think,
Hmm.
and also is just like it's part of Final Fantasy 7.
Yeah, like Opera Omnia, everything I've seen of it, it is extremely one that I would say out of any of these, if we take a close look at any of them, the only one I think would be interesting is probably Mobius.
Yeah, Mobius is a
Because
very
Mobius is a little weird.
Mobius is kind of like its own thing. It's very much like not a spin
Yeah.
off or anything. It's its own like Final Fantasy
It's not a
game.
spin-off, it's not just a gameplay shell with some Final Fantasy stuff,
Yeah,
as far as I understand, and it's not like a crossover, "Hey, look, all your favorite guys are here," like Opera Omnia or,
Record Keeper.
Record Keeper are.
Yeah, Opera Omnia.
I
I
don't
think
think
I
either
think
of those really have story. Opera Omnia kind of has character interactions,
Yeah,
but, like,
Opera
not
Omnia
much
is
beyond
very
that.
much in the same vein of Dissidia as it's just like, hey, you get to see these characters interact with each other, but it's not just the main characters this time. It's also like
Mhm,
here's Sid and Saj, interacting or something,
mhm.
like Sid Final Fantasy 5 and Saj or something. I don't know.
So, something else I'm noting here that I do need to comment on, we're only looking at the one Chocobo dungeon?
This is this is kind of just like a general like chocobo. So there's a lot of chocobos. There's a lot of chocobo game. A lot of things listed on Wikipedia for the chocobo game. I
Yeah,
don't know.
true.
I don't know the full breadth of the games and
There's, like
such.
there's
When
Chocobo Tales, there's the 3 original dungeon games, only one of which was brought over to the West.
Mhm.
There's, like, a couple of board games, I think, like Fortune Street style things.
Yeah.
There are a couple things
Yeah, we
that
might
would
not
fall
check
under
out all
this.
of them, but like this is mostly just like I just put Chocobo on everybody because those are the two. I know that there's a Chocobo dungeon on the PS1. I know there's everybody as the
Mhm.
game that the most recent one, and there's a lot of other
Yeah.
stuff, and I haven't had the time to look and figure out like the full breadth of what I want to look
I
at
also
with that.
feel like we can probably skip over things like Chocobo Racing if
Yeah,
we don't want to do it.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
if we're getting to that's a Chocobo spin-off, not a Final Fantasy spin-off, we're getting kind of a distance from it, and I think we're allowed to
Yeah,
cut it off at some point, you
yeah,
know?
exactly. It's like
Because otherwise we'll have a lot of stuff to dive into. Also,
Chocobo Racing is a very interesting little racing kart game, but like probably not a high priority of what we're doing. It was funny credit
yeah,
card numbers racing.
yeah, oh boy. Also, one other thing I noticed that I feel I need to comment on. Final Fantasy 13 lighting returns. Get her ass.
No!
Get
No!
her ass. Get
No!
her. Get
No!
her.
Damn it! Fuck! Oh, they're changing the group. They're changing the group chat as we speak. No! Ah! Lighting returns from the war. Loser, loser, loser. Yeah. I will say
Claire.
other point where some changes may occur is just like they really put a lot of fucking time into Crystal Chronicles. There's so much fucking Crystal Chronicles shit. I don't know that I'm gonna look at all of it, but I do think the My Life games are kind of interesting. But we might not do
Maybe
those.
just one of the My Lives.
Yeah, maybe just like one stream where we take a little look at both. Maybe like
few.
one stream where we take a look at both of them, the two main ones. Yeah.
The Crystal Chronicles games have enough going on that it might be worth
like,
looking at.
I want to look at these three at least. Chronicles, Ring of Fates,
Crystal
and Echoes of Time.
Bears is like doing its own thing, and I don't know much about that own thing, but it might be interesting to look at just because of that.
Yeah.
I think we're at a point in this, and we've got so much ahead of us. We should agree at this point, let's have a side game ripcord.
Yeah.
If we get into a side game and we decide, oh, we're not digging this, we kind of
already did that with Mystic Quest already. Yeah, it's like we got to a point where it's like, hey, I'm good, and we moved on.
Like I'm saying, maybe we don't even need to watch a video of it if it's like dragging us down that much. We can just pull the fucking
Hey, guess what? Millie has changed my name in the charity chat to Final Fantasy Lighting Returns.
Hell yeah! Get owned!
I'm being yerkied live on stream.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this is sort of just the scope of the series. You know, games I want to look at. I want to get back to Stranger Paradise. These two right here might not be in order situation.
I will have to figure out a way to co-op it with you for Stranger.
Stranger is fun. Like, because I did do a couple back when Elden Ring came out. Back when it and Elden Ring came out, me and Millie did a little bit of a playthrough, but we didn't. I never finished it, so I want to get back to it at some point. And Final Fantasy 16 is still on the table as a thing I want to do in my other stream times. But yeah,
fair.
Other stuff is like, and just City NT. This will probably be a single stream at some point, but like, you know, I don't want to look at that game.
It's a arena fight game. We can just show off the fact that it's one of those.
Yeah, and I like the City and Duodecim, but those might end up being more video than game. What we look at, because they're RPG.
There's a lot to play through.
They are very hefty little
not a lot of
play modes, and it just
kind of
goes.
Yeah,
yeah.
Like that's the thing about some of these. Some of these they aren't going to have the gameplay variety to. It kind of deserves its own entry, I feel like, because it is very different from the rest of the series. So I think that's fine.
Yeah, that's fair.
Also,
Millie.
looking forward to Explorers. I never got far in that because I never.
Explorers is really neat. I enjoyed what I played of Explorers. It's a neat little kind of hunting kind of game.
I think being able to play it with somebody would really help.
Yeah, if I can figure out like Citra net play for it or something, that would be very cool.
Yeah.
It's definitely a cool
blown
little
up
game.
When the emulator was. I don't know. I don't know how that works.
Who knows?
We'll figure it out when we get there.
So, I want to start talking about the games we've played so far, kind of ranking them. So we're gonna start. So here's the thing. We're gonna start at the
Yes.
beginning, but I'm gonna tell you right now. We're just gonna put it on here. It's not. It's not. There's no place for it. It's just on. It's gonna be on the list. F1. But I'm gonna tell you
Yeah.
right now. The bottom tier has already been decided. That has already been
Yep.
decided for us.
100%. 100%. 100%.
April
Worst
Fool's
game.
stream of Last Story, maybe. Yeah, the Bravelies are kind of not part. I don't view them as being in the scope of this project because they are not strictly Final Fantasies. But yeah, they are also
Wait.
modern RPGs and very long.
Yeah, we're gonna look at For Heroes of Light, which is kind
Yeah.
of a precursor.
Yeah,
to
sort of
those.
precursor
So
to Bravely.
that'll be our touch on it. Let me suggest April Fool's co-stream. You stream Last Story. I stream Last Remnant.
Yeah. That's a game I've wanted to look at for a while.
Last Remnant?
Weird game. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. It is. I played like 5 minutes of it before. Actually, I can look at Steam and see the exact amount of time I played it. Hold on. I played it for 30 minutes and never went back.
Fair.
So yeah.
Molly will stream a Dragon Quest. So, throwing a note here at the top, we are talking about Final Fantasy 1 through 6 in the context of the Pixel remasters. That is something I think worth noting in a lot of these games. There are some distinct changes between some of these games that will affect, in some ways, how we feel. That affects probably how we feel about these games versus if we had played the original releases or such.
I'm going to say, speaking of that, Millie, of Last Story isn't good, but it's interesting. I think you could say that about like any given Mistwalker game.
True.
Like,
Fantasian finally being freed from the Apple Arcade.
Yeah. No shade to like Mistwalker as a company. They do put interesting art out there. I don't think anything's been like an unquestionable banger. Anyway.
Yeah.
Let's talk tier lists. Sorry.
Yeah, so starting at the beginning, Final Fantasy 1. Final Fantasy 1 was the first Final Fantasy game I played. I played it on EA originally. So this was my first time playing it playing the Pixel remaster. I got to play it with the kind of closer to the original with the spell slot system, where it's much more directly D&D like game, where it's very apparent the origins of the series as, hey, this studio is full of tabletop RPG nerds, and they wanted to make a D&D video game, so they did. Final Fantasy 1 is good. Final Fantasy 1 is still pretty good. It's very
solid.
It's very basic, but it's not like
honestly, if I had to say it had one big drawback, it's that every single dungeon is like a big empty room that you kind of wander around.
Yeah, dungeon design definitely shows its age for sure.
Yeah, it's not terrible by any means, but like it is also a game that is much more focused on resource management.
Yeah,
in a way that I think is pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's a game that much like kind of the way many old RPGs old video game RPGs that are cribbing from tabletop RPGs do. It's a game that kind of expects you to go in and out of dungeons as your resources allow you, and sort of prepare for bigger dives until you can finally accomplish the goal of the dungeon. Yeah, I think it's still a very interesting little game for what it is.
It's solid. Its final twist is genuinely pretty surprising and cool.
Yeah,
not surprising at this point, but
no,
it
for the time
makes sense within the story, but it's also wild,
Yeah, it's not something that if you're blind to it, you're not expecting, the whole hey, the first boss of the game is also the final boss, and you put him in this time loop, and you've been part of this loop and will you break the loop? Will you, or are you continuing the loop? Who knows? Come back in 30 something years when we make a very angry man.
A very angry man listen to Limp Bizkit and punch monsters in the face.
It's so wild. It's so wild to think about Limp Bizkit, how Red Durst seems like he's actually kind of a solid dude. He's just also very easy to make fun of. Did you know that he's
Yeah,
in? Did you know that he's in? I saw the TV Glow. Red Durst.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he
That's
plays the main.
fascinating.
He plays the main character's dad. In
That's fun.
in I saw the TV Glow, which
He has been getting involved in movies in general. I think he directed one, and it was,
yeah.
from what I heard from people, it was okay.
Mhm.
Like, nothing to write home about, but, like, okay.
Mhm. But yeah,
But yeah,
Final Fantasy One.
anyway.
It's the start of the list. It's here. Um, Final Fantasy Two. We did not enjoy Final Fantasy Two very much. We kind of came out of Final Fantasy Two kind of cold to it. I think.
I feel like, for me personally at least, and I might be saying this partially because I wasn't the one playing it,
Mhm.
but in hindsight, absence has made the heart grow a little fonder.
Yeah, that's
A
why I want. That's
very,
why.
very little bit.
That's partially why I wanted to do this at the start of this rather than
Yeah,
at
yeah, yeah, yeah.
the end of last time. Also because the end of last time was like, um,
Yeah, that's fair.
yeah, I am gonna say for FF2 definitely below Final Fantasy One for me right now.
Yeah, no argument there.
I think I think I think overall I think Final Fantasy Two was interesting as an experiment in a lot of different ways. You know, the
Mhm.
style of RPG, the leveling system that it has, the stat system it has, still very unusual and kind of unique for games. Well, not really unique because
The
it did
keyword
spin off
system for
into a whole
dialogue was also
series.
pretty neat,
Yeah.
even if they didn't actually end up doing much with
Yeah,
it.
they didn't do much with it, but like for the time that that's pretty. It was about on par with what you might expect for something that was new and experimental like that. And yeah, having sort of this adventure game, like because like the thing is like adventure games. You know, the earliest adventure games were also from like famous RPG developers like Yuji Horii. Very
Mhm,
made some of the more well known ones on the NES Famicom.
Portopia, all that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of shared DNA between adventure games and RPGs, and
Mhm.
I think the keyword system, for as much as it's not fully realized as a system, is a very interesting sort of overlap of those two genres. That I wish to see to see other games that do similar things. It's a very
Yeah,
interesting thing, and of course the unique-ish leveling system that kind of became the basis for a whole other RPG series that is in its own right very influential and important to the history of RPGs. From the same mind as Final Fantasy II, really. Um,
mhm. The same
but I do think
twisted mind.
that there were a lot of I felt like that there were a lot of problems with Final Fantasy 2, and some of those at the time I admitted might have been partially some changes in the pixel remaster affecting like encounters and how they worked, but there was a lot of really frustrating just encounter design going on in that game. Something
If
we've encountered a couple times throughout the
Yeah,
series, but it was very
yeah,
prevalent in 2 at a point.
it was.
And
I would
also
also go ahead.
I would also say that while the dungeons in 1 were not terribly interesting, the dungeons in 2 were actively kind of
Yeah,
aggravating.
that is 100% what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
One part of FF2 I will never, ever, ever, ever defend is that the dungeons are the worst ones we've seen so
Yes.
far.
For sure.
Like, just bad.
They're just it's a
Not
whole lot
visually
of
interesting, not interesting to explore, just a pain in the
yeah.
ass.
The amount of the
Way
amount of
too
times where
big.
you go through a door and it's just a square room. And
Mhm.
apparently in the original it's like there's like monsters on every tile kind of room sometimes like that. It's just it's a very the dungeon design is just awful. Dungeon design is just
It's just bad.
bottom tier for that game. Um
100%.
I do find that
I'm
while
using percents a lot tonight.
yeah. You know what? I'm going to do something real quick also. I'm going to cuz I realize this might I realize there's no sound besides us talking here. I'm going to just put on some music on low volume here.
Good plan.
Go to find my playlist. Go to
Oh, good. I get to hear this too.
yeah,
Hooray.
turn it down a little bit. All right. But yeah, I will, and like the other thing that we kind of harped on a lot when we played it is, it's an attempt after one to have more of a full story, but it does not really land. I think in a good way. I don't think it lands as well as it could, but I think
Yeah.
I have warmed up to it. I have cooled off on my feelings about it a little bit since then, where it's like
Mhm.
I think it's still I think it can be forgiven for being sounds good. I do think that
It
still I think
helps that it has at least two good characters in Furion and Leon, and
Yeah.
that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and it also helps again, like I always said, that the Emperor is still a pretty fun villain. You don't get to see him for a very long time, but when he shows up, he does have a presence in a way that's really
He
fun.
does have the presence and gravitas that kind of villain needs. They managed to pull off that much.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a shame that unfortunately, like most of the main characters are of the main party. It's all like Furion is he's the guy, he's there, but like it's like
He's got some stuff going on.
yeah, he's got some stuff, but then it's like Guy and what's her name, I can't remember.
Yeah, I wanted to say Rosa, but no, that's from 4.
No, yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. Is like I don't remember. They did not have characters. And
Maria? No,
Maria, yeah,
that's
no,
not
no.
it,
I
is
think
it?
Maria is correct. I think it's Maria.
I'm gonna look this up.
I think it's Maria.
Continue.
But then it's also like the cycling cast of fourth guy, was
It makes them impossible to get attached to because they're
Yeah.
gonna die.
Yeah.
Like it was Maria. It
Yeah.
was Maria.
yeah, okay. In my dreams, I see that town. Anyways, yeah, it's just I feel like just it's also just like the one thing that still stuck with me about how we felt about the story in that game was the war. The whole thing with the war just felt kind of didn't land. I feel like the whole thing of like we're in war, the terrible, like when there's a point where like a bunch of towns get bombed. And I didn't really feel anything from that. There wasn't really a feeling of like, oh no, the horrors of war. It was just.
I think we're gonna come back to this when we get to FF6.
Yeah, we're probably gonna come back to this. We kind of touched on. We did touch on some parallels in our feelings on 2 when we were talking about 6 while we played it. But yeah, for now, 2 goes below 1. It'll probably go down. It might go down a little lower. But I don't, it might stay kind of close to each other. The other games will probably go above or below.
Yeah. Might go above and beyond.
I'm gonna put FF3 up above 1, because that's how I feel. I felt after we'd gone through 3, and that's how I still kind of feel. 3 was surprisingly very cool, very fun.
Yeah, I like.
I do think that from a gameplay perspective. We did have the benefit of the Pixel Remaster being the best version to play. It doesn't have some of the more wonky, unpopular systems of the original.
Yeah,
and
it
the
does
DS
help with
remake.
it does help with the grinding at the very, very least.
Yeah, and there's definitely some parts of it where it's a thing of like I like the job system. I've always liked the job system. It's why Final Fantasy V is going to be ranked pretty highly on here when we get to it, but. FF3's job system is much more of a puzzle kind of thing than an actual system to play around with. You kind of just change to the jobs that are necessary, and there's not really a lot of wiggle room for certain parts of the game on what job you're using. But I think it's also... I think that it kind of harkens back to 1 in some interesting ways, the party being sort of these nobodies who you get to shape in your own mind.
How you like.
Yeah, and then also having the
decided
extra
to define them as
amalgam hive mind creature. Yeah,
that has mutually all fallen in love with that one prince.
Yeah. And then it also did kind of did do the fourth character or fifth character in its case thing as 2, but I think with much more defined and interesting characters.
I think
in 2 a lot of time
they were all really fun, and they didn't. It felt like less of them died per capita.
Yeah, we'll get back, and we'll get back to characters coming in and out of the party and dying a lot in the next game. But yeah, fun. Give me a second here. Thinking where my train of thought was. Oh yeah, the other thing was just that like I think Final Fantasy 3 is where aesthetically a lot of Final Fantasy was defined for the first time.
Yeah, you kind of get a sense of the proper look
Yeah.
and like feel of a Final Fantasy world. The mix of technology and
Hmm.
fantasy had been
Yeah.
there since the beginning, but it feels more well
Yeah.
defined here.
Very very like not sort of bog standard fantasy, very kind of like drawing from a lot of real world inspirations, like a lot of like real world European type mythologies rather than just kind of being Tolkien-esque.
Having both light and darkness, but not having either be clearly good or evil, even though you're aligned with the light.
Mm-hmm. Having very genuine kind of moments of surprise in its scope, like the point where it's like you start out on the little island, and when you finally get the airship early on in the game, and you leave the island and you see just this vast ocean that you fly over, and the world, and like getting to see like, oh, there's so much more to this world, and there's and then like as the game goes on, more of that world shows up as well. Like just this very grand scope to what Final Fantasy is that started with 3, as well as just kind of being these very experimental and unique kind of what takes on, European style fantasy that really very interesting, and having sort of also kind of the start of like an kind of like the beginning of like an environmentalist message that shows up a couple times in the games, I guess, where it's like the cloud, like not super strong, but like where the cloud of darkness is not like an evil force, it's not really like a human force, but rather an evil, like sort of a force of nature that has more to do with the world than anything.
Yeah, and has gotten out of control due to an imbalance.
And yeah, I think just that there was a lot to chew on with 3 that was very interesting, and I think part of this is that 3 was the one I was most blind on as a game going into it. 3 and 2 so far have been the ones I was most blind on as games, but 3 definitely like surprised me more in a positive way. So of the first 3 games,
it's just really goofy and fun in like ways that feel intentional.
Yeah. It's got a really
funny, but not in ways that were intentional.
Yeah. It's 3 is just a very fun adventure. It feels like an adventure is happening, and that's what 100%. I like.
And you start from such humble beginnings too. You're just a bunch of kids who fall in a cave.
Yeah.
Like some kind of cave story brought it
back. Yeah. But yeah, 3 I think is just still one of the better ones. We played. I think it's I think it's one that people should play and experience, especially now that we have a very solid available version in English. 4. I'm not sure where I want to put 4 on here just yet. Right now, I gotta talk about it and think about it a little bit, because
that's fair.
I love 4 a lot. 4 was also one of my first ones. I think I'll probably put 4 above 3. I think I'll put 4.
I personally wouldn't. I came into this being the 4 hater. I did end up liking it more than I thought I would.
I think it's very close for me. That's the thing. It's like it's very close to 3 for me. I don't know if I want to put it. If I want to say I like 3 or 4 better overall.
I could pretty solidly say I like 4 a little bit less, and it's mostly just because it promises a lot, and I just want a little bit more from it.
I think that's fair.
It's really a thing of like. I'll be straight up. Another reason is battle system wise, it's the first ATB game. I don't think I like the ATB games for all.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I think it's until the 3D ones that I fully like it. 5 I kind of like, but it's with every other system that doesn't have to do with the actual moment to moment battle stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna put 4 just below 3, very close. I think it's very close for me. I think they're both very fantastic games. I do think that there are some gameplay aspects of 4 that kind of bump it down a little bit for me. It's just like it is the first ATV game. I like ATV. I don't have much of a problem with ATV, but I do think there are some moments where it kind of bumps into it, or it's like kind of they're figuring it out and kind of bumps into it a lot. I think that the characters, gameplay wise, it's are very rigid in a way that doesn't excite me personally. It's each character is a very just like stuck in what they do as a character, and that's just like there's not a whole lot of.
I do think they use that very static shape to at least give the characters a lot of mechanical character, and that helps a lot
for sure. This is not like a wholly negative thing. This is it is, but it is
a personal preference thing. Yeah. Well, get it.
And I think
I need to stop saying 100%. I need to stop.
100%.
God
100%.
damn it.
100%.
100.
But yeah.
98.7%.
Yeah. I think 4 is very ambitious in its story. I think it's very well done and ambitious in its story. It's going for it's going whole hog on like a full character-driven like story that beyond what the series has done before, and it does that very well. But yeah, it's also very limited. It's also very focused in where that character development is. Cecil, Golbez, Ed, the twins get a little bit of it, and then otherwise the other characters they have their little arcs, but they're not like full character development. I would say they're just kind of like it's just like. They're not bad, but they are just a little smaller, I think honestly, the thing is, this is like for me, gameplay wise, for 4 also is just that like 4 has the little negative point of I didn't have a problem with it gameplay wise until suddenly at the very end I could not fucking fight Zeramis. It felt like for no real good reason, Zeramis just was impossible for me to beat. And I don't know if it was just something I clearly missed about the gameplay that just hadn't come up before then, but it felt bad.
It did.
Yeah.
It felt really bad. That was the main thing I was thinking of when I said I feel like the ATV use in this game is pretty rough, especially so for this era.
Yeah. But overall, I think the game is a very, like I said, it's a very ambitious and interesting story for them in terms of storytelling technique in an RPG for the time, and I think it does rather well. I think it does rather well, and also tying some of the gameplay aspects to that as well in interesting ways. I mentioned it a little bit ago. We got to talk about it. It has a real problem of the party having characters come in and die and like leave, and only one character technically dies, but they play the card of they play the death card a lot. Only one character actually dies, but
it is both interesting and frustrating that you don't have a stable party.
Yeah, but the final party of the game is one you only have for a little while, and it relatively speaking. It does invent half the iconic forms of Final Fantasy trope language. Yeah, a lot of stuff that would be Final Fantasy staples do harken back to 4. A lot. There's also a lot that when weren't as well known to be coming from 3 until we got a couple of different versions of 3 here. But that is also true of 3, I would say. But definitely 4 is one of the more influential games of the series for sure.
I will say 4 also starts the problem that I have with like this little SNES trilogy that we have here of a lot of motioning at world building without actually doing it.
Yeah. Dark Knight and Paladin, Dragoon, Ninja, Meteor, half the summon. Yeah, the summons get their the summons existed in 3, but a lot of the summons existed in 3, but they hadn't quite solidified their iconic looks as much. 4 definitely kind of has a lot of those. Lot of those.
4 solidifies a lot of stuff, and it's understandable why. all of these criticisms I'm throwing out aren't to say that FF4 is a bad game. It's
Obviously
just
not. I'm
to
not,
say
yeah.
I like it less than 3.
Yeah, no,
Maybe less than 1 too, personally, but
I think that's a fair point to have, but for me personally, and this is my list.
It is your
yeah.
list.
But yeah, no, your input does matter though. I'm being cheeky.
I know.
Yeah. 3, 4, and 1 are very close together for me in terms of like how I feel about them. They're very solid games overall in just different ways. But what I like and enjoy in the games, I do think overall like of things. Like if I were to somehow like I can't put this into words, but like sort of this sort of immaterial checklist in my brain, more things are being checked with 3 than. Like, slightly more things are checked with 3 than 4, and then slightly more with 4 than 1.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Is this the moment where we take a second to talk about the After Years? And the Interlude?
They're both at the bottom. They're both very weird. Interlude is above it because Interlude is not necessarily a bad game, because Interlude is more directly just built off of FF4 as a game. But Interlude is also just really fucking weird.
And also barely fucking anything.
Yeah, barely anything. It's not even really a game. It's an extra
like
thing they made.
It's a demo.
It's a thing
I
they
almost
made.
feel like we shouldn't rank it.
I'm gonna put it in with After Years as one.
As one thing. I think that's fair.
It's because Interlude is a thing that came out after Years as just sort of like, hey, we're putting After Years onto the global release of the PSP version. Here's sort of an in-between to sort of bridge the gap and make it feel a little less weird. It didn't work, but
it didn't.
After Years sucks. After Years is the worst Final Fantasy thing, I think. I think it's going to stay at the bottom of this list for the rest of the time.
Do you want to play Final Fantasy IV again, but everything's worse and it's more sexist than it already was?
Yeah! Boy, howdy!
Oh,
and then the most interesting part of that game is the final boss, and it's not interesting in a good way.
Hey, you gamers out there asking for the non-woke games, this is the only one. You have to play it forever. Enjoy.
Yeah. Just like so much, just like all the new characters are half-baked, the old characters are assassinated. Fucking the story is just retreading Final Fantasy IV, but in a worse way.
It is retreading it in an absurd way. Remember when they do the petrification thing again, but in the stupidest way possible?
Yeah, where it's solved in like a minute because
it just turns into stone and teleports her away, and then she's literally a room away and walks back in, and it did nothing.
So bad.
It's so fucking bad. Hey, remember this thing that happened in FF4 with somebody jumping off a cliff? What if we did that again, but nothing was different and it just happened again? The character commented on the fact that, I'm doing this again. That's weird. What if we made it so Kane's actual motivation the entire time was that he really wanted to have sex with Rosa? And what if Rosa had no opinion on this?
So I just brought this up for a second because this is sort of the perfect summation of Final Fantasy IV: The After Years is Squaresoft finding a way to make an RPG out of this.
Yeah.
Yeah. The RPG equivalent.
The ending is extremely Monster Go-Go. Was there ever really a monster at all? None of this fucking mattered. Who gives a shit?
Yeah. What if Final Fantasy VII Remake was just a straight remake?
Yeah.
Yeah, or no, yeah. Like, what if we did the sequel to Final Fantasy VII, but it was just Final Fantasy VII? Like, we do a sequel to Final Fantasy VII that isn't like the Final Fantasy VII remake, but is instead an actual remake of Final Fantasy VII. No. Oh, God. Yeah. After Years is bad. After Years is bad. No one should ever play After Years. Don't let your friends play After Years.
Yeah. Like, here's the thing. Even if, like, every part of Final Fantasy VII Remake project ends up doing everything exactly the same, as original Final Fantasy VII did, it would still be more interesting in the fact that it's already performed and continues to perform meta commentary. After Years didn't even fucking attempt that. Didn't even wave at it. It just did the same things again. Oh, and also the whole moon phase system is bad and doesn't add anything to the game.
The moon phase system
makes it more annoying
sucked.
to play. Yeah, it just made it more annoying to play. It's not like you can manipulate in your favor in any way that matters.
It's
so, like,
taking,
who gives a shit?
Like I mentioned, my personal preference issue of Final Fantasy IV having very locked-in characters who you can't mess around with on what they do. It's making that bad. It's making that a bad, just objectively bad, because it's just like, yeah, you're stuck with these characters who do these specific things, and depending on how many times you've rested at the fucking inn, you know, before going in this dungeon, this character is just having a bad time. It's, oh god, yeah. There's nothing good happened in Final Fantasy IV the after years, the development of it, the writing of it, the design of it, the bad. Anything new and interesting it could have done, it just squandered. The best thing to come out of it is just that some of the new characters have good designs. That's really it. They visually are interesting looking characters, and that's it. Like, I like the dwarf princess. She was cool. Can't even remember her name. 3 years.
Yeah, that's fair.
So
Luca, I want to say, or something like that.
Luca, something like that. I think. Yeah, I think it's Luca. Anyways.
Yeah, she was the best part. She was the only character who had anything going on.
Yeah. Anyways, after years, we went to our first spin-off game, Seiken Densetsu.
It was all right.
Yeah, it was all right. I'm gonna say Seiken Densetsu. I'm gonna say
I think it's at
somewhere
least
around
over
one.
FF2.
It's over FF2 for sure.
Yeah,
I'm gonna say it's very
me
very
saying this
close
as
to
the
FF1.
FF2 defender.
Yeah.
I think it would be below FF1 for me.
Probably.
It's just a little rough.
I think it surprised me with like where its story went, and I think gameplay wise it was very fun. It was a solid little Zelda.
There were a couple of funny bits, like if one is bit by the Medusa, they become the Medusa.
Yep. That
you
that
must
was
take
hilarious.
my tears.
Just this very tragic end of a character from the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
Just like,
and
damn!
Kind of out of nowhere, too.
Yeah.
Oh,
and like the game
is contagious?
Yeah.
That's new.
Also, just like, the game kind of just ends on kind of a downer. Also, of just like, you say, like, yeah, I'm going to become the tree forever. It's like,
yeah,
okay.
Like, you save the tree and you're going to guard it forever, and it feels like the world's living on borrowed time at that point. Yeah,
it's a very interesting game that is just also is just kind of like it's that's just kind of it. That's all I got. It's a very interesting game. Very interesting for being a little Game Boy like Final Fantasy spin-off Zelda like, and it spawned a whole series that is full of very interesting games,
which we are not looking at.
Well, I might look at it at some point, but. I do like,
probably
but like,
not part of this.
Not part of this. Only the first one was called Final Fantasy Gaiden.
Sure.
I'm gonna say, and next, I'm just gonna say while we're here, I'm just gonna jump ahead a little bit and just say, Mystic Quest goes here. While I'm thinking about it, Mystic Quest goes.
Really?
I think Mystic Quest. I think I like Seiken Densetsu.
I would put it below FF2.
You would put it below FF2?
I would put it below FF2. We didn't finish it for one.
For one, you're right. That is a good point.
Yeah, it just doesn't have systems for you to work with.
Yeah, it's not a very I think gameplay-wise, I just didn't find it very interesting.
It had interesting concepts, but none of them really came together. is like the long and short of it. It's too grindy. The way that the battles work, they aren't anything you can strategize around. You just gotta have numbers.
It's you gotta have numbers. You just gotta kind of know what the correct answer is to any encounter and have the numbers. And it
just, and like the status effects are even more irritating when you.
It also had like a really awful kind of curve to its difficulty of like.
It just spikes. Oh.
By the time we quit, it was just like it was because like the dungeon was so long and such a resource drain. It felt like impossible to deal with the boss of it. It's just like, and like we saw it too when we watched the video of the rest of it.
So draining.
The rest of the game was just like it only gets longer. So like we watched a long play of it that was like 4 or 6 6 hours long I think total. It's like the last like hour and a half was still there in the game, like maybe 2 hours of the game still left, and we were pretty far in. It's just like so much left in like the last 2 dungeons.
It is so unreasonable.
It's
an interesting experiment. None of it works.
It's a game that I mostly have heard praise for it from speedrunners, and I think that makes sense. I think it's a game that can be very strictly optimized in a way that would be interesting.
Yeah.
But as a blind playthrough and just kind of going through it, not trying to do that, not knowing any of that, man, it just kind of lost its goodwill, really. I will say,
it does have very charming animations.
Yeah. It's very charming animation and sound-wise, even if a lot of it is clearly like kind of reused 5. But that's not a bad thing. It's very clear like we're reusing kind of stuff we already had from like what we did with 5 and such.
A lot of it felt like it was reused from Seiken Densetsu, honestly.
That too. It was both, I think. It was a little bit both.
Not as an inherently bad thing. It felt a little less like it was wowing in the same way that the other SNES games were, but it worked for what it was doing. I don't have any objections to the art style. The animations are charming. The characters
music was good.
Fine. Like none of them were active. The story wasn't bad, but it wasn't much. The characters weren't bad, but they weren't much. All of it works fine, and I think it would be a pretty enjoyable game if the battle system had worked.
Yeah. If there was more substance to the battle system. There just wasn't. It was strictly numbers, strictly just have you done all the grinding? Like that was the thing. It's like you just had to do all of the battle stadiums to get more experience number and just be bigger and be ready for going through each dungeon. It just kind
and have the resistance to status effects that you need.
It was the thing of like there were no I wasn't able to make choices of how I progressed through the game. It kind of felt like in other Final Fantasies, I can make choices about whether I want to do encounters or not, whether I want to gain experience, not whether I want to, focus on a certain character and such. There just wasn't that for Mystic Quest. It was do it all or die.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's the spin-offs we've played so far. That's how we feel about those. Here is I will not be swayed on this. Final Fantasy V is, I think, still my favorite of the first 6 games.
No argument here. It's a good game.
Final Fantasy V is just, I think, the perfect mixture of fun characters, fun setting, very, very interesting gameplay. Very fun, interesting gameplay systems. The job system in 5 is so good.
I personally think the ATB system works at its best, where the 2 things that you are deciding are character builds that you create before the battle even starts, and more broad, like, organizational decisions of what you're doing moment to moment, rather than having to make really strong decisions in the moment to react to what the enemy is doing. I feel like FF5 does both of those pretty well, in the sense that a lot of the bosses, they just do the mechanic that they do.
Yeah.
It's a matter of figuring out how to get around it. There are a couple of fights, like the one that shall not be named because it's a very offensive name.
Yeah.
Where you're just kind of waiting until it works out because he keeps swapping what's the actual target.
Yeah. And there are solutions for, doing that fight. That's kind of thing. It's just like every fight has a lot of different almost every fight in that game has a lot of different solutions based on like based on what build you go in with, what classes you're using. And that's why something like the 4-Job Fiesta works really well. That's why it's so popular and is still going at all these years that it's been going, is that the systems are such that you can do a lot of different things in that game and still make it work. And I think that's really fun. I think that's really fun of just like it's and just that even like the worst jobs in the game, the weakest jobs in the game, still feel like they've got some interesting stuff to contribute with the abilities subsystem of the job system and what they can contribute to other jobs, And it
can be fun to make one work just for fun.
Yeah.
Like making Dragoon work is fun. Making Berserker work can be fun.
Yeah. But yeah, Final Fantasy V I think it's really good. I think the
no, go ahead.
Okay.
I wasn't going to say anything. I was just agreeing.
All right. I think that the main cast benefits from being just really small in a way. Really small. We'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah.
It's cast size.
Yeah. It's just
there's 5 characters. There's 5 party members.
5 characters, four party members for most of it.
And then there's some secondary characters who show up throughout the game that are very fun and interesting in their own right.
Pretty consistent.
Yeah. And there's a fun villain. There's a fun, interesting villain.
Yeah, Xdeath gets to show up a lot, and he has a lot of fun. Let's put on the table that we're gonna have to talk about a villain not showing up enough.
Yeah.
I'm gonna argue that Kefka probably doesn't show up in the ways that he needs to, and that other villains in the Empire don't either. But we'll get there.
We'll definitely get there. We're gonna have a lot. We're gonna have a lot to say in a minute. Yeah, I think. But yeah, Xdeath shows up pretty early in the game. Relatively early in the game, after the first act. Which is a reasonable point for the villain to show up.
And even before then, you're feeling his presence because there are people who are possessed by him.
Yeah, you get the sense that there is a specific greater presence manipulating the story and manipulating the world, trying to cause harm that you are fighting against, and you are building up to it. Like, there's a really good progression of like the first act of building up to understanding who then he shows up again in the Undead Settlement. Building up to who Xdeath is, like revealing Xdeath and what his plan is and what the state of
and then
the world.
Kick him off the cliff and get the Ring of Favor and Protection. Anyway.
Yeah. And then you get the second act where it's like, okay, now we're fighting against Xdeath, figuring out what Xdeath's plan is, and then it's like you get the third act of Xdeath has won. Let's go stop him. Or Xdeath has not won, but Xdeath
has on the verge of winning.
Xdeath has made a big accomplishment and gained a lot of power, and he's causing big problems now. We have to deal with him.
He's also killed one of your allies.
Yeah. It's time to deal with him.
That's a big deal.
Uh-huh.
And there's also like a really good back and forth between him and the party. It never feels like you're fully outclassed, but it also never feels like he's not a threat either.
Yeah. The fact that you get to have actual fights with him up to that point, which is like you have the fight with Galuf against him where Galuf gets to, have his final stand. You get to go fight him and win in his castle, but then, his plan still goes through. And then you get to go fight him as the final boss and finish the game. And it's like he's changed, is more powerful. There's a really good progression to Final Fantasy V that I really love, is what I'm going at here. And like there's a lot of stuff happening throughout the entire thing. There's not really like as much of a lull. Much of a lull at any point. Like maybe some points where it like kind of dips a little bit, but not like majorly.
Also, like, each of the kingdoms feels developed and
Yeah.
like it doesn't quite feel like a full world yet, but it doesn't really need to for what the story's doing.
Yeah.
And like you get a sense of what
Like-
characters are like and what they're after based on where they came from.
Yeah. Like, you get to go, like, because you get to go across the world, the first world. You go across the map, you go to each kingdom for the 4 crystals, and you get to sort of see what those places are like, and those places are clearly influenced by the crystal that they are associated
Everything's
with.
on fire and fire.
Yeah. You know, the water town has a lot of...
the funniest
I
one.
mean, the water town has a lot of water, too. And then Earth is ruins that are underground. But then... You also get to go in the second world. You get to go to see, like, hey, here's Galoof's kingdom, and you get to see, you know, what this place is like, and then you get to meet Zezit, and you get, you know, to see his soldiers and what he's about. Even he's only there briefly, but you get a sense of it.
And
yeah,
all that. It's really interesting.
You punch the chief so hard that he dies in like 3 weeks.
Which was really his own fault. He didn't need to take a fight.
Yeah. But yeah, I think just Final Fantasy V
is just really strong.
Yeah, Final Fantasy V is like, I don't know that it's gonna maintain. It might not be, you know, like #1 forever for the series. It's gonna hold a very special place in my heart forever. It's always gonna be like one of my favorites.
It's always gonna be close to the top. I think
it's always gonna be close to the top.
It's just solid.
And it's just solid all around. It's just, you know, like it's the thing of like, like it's like the thing of like. Zelda, another series that's really important to me. Like, Wind Waker is a game that I think many people like. It's got its problems, but like, it's still gonna be just like one of those things where it's like, yeah, overall, it's still pretty solid. Or like, Ocarina of Time is one that, like, you know, you can argue like it's a bit overrated. It's not the greatest game ever, people say, but it's like you go back and look at Ocarina of Time, and it's just like, this game is just solid. This game is just really solid all around. You know?
I'm gonna stop us for a second, and since we're talking about this and talking about just in general, is there a bad thing we can say about FF5? If we had to say a bad thing about it, what would we say about it? I think one of them, if I had to say something, is
I'm biased.
we did mention it. Some of the classes are much less useful than the others, and there are certain ones that are not straight up upgrades of others, but are close to it in a way that they were in FF3, and that's a little rough. Especially when it's a game that's designed for you to use everything.
Yeah, and yeah, I think
pacing. I can see that.
I think that's fair. I think there is I think there's some pacing issues. Characters are pretty one-dimensional. That's true, but I think that's not necessarily like a bad thing.
I don't necessarily think that's a flaw for the kind of story it's telling.
Yeah,
and like it's a very broad heroic story.
Like,
so, like
I think one thing is that the Final Fantasy V story is not breaking ground as like something super deep or like incredible. I think it's a very straightforward, basic, like, people have described Final Fantasy V as the Saturday morning cartoon of Final Fantasy. And I think that's accurate. I think that's very accurate.
And like, I think there's depth that you can dig out of most of the characters. I'd say the flattest character is probably Lena.
Yeah.
I think that's fair to say.
Yeah,
she doesn't have a lot going on, except she is self-sacrificing. She really cares about everyone. Like, the one thing you'd say she has as a grain as sort of a grain thing is that she cares about her father in such a way that it causes her to make foolish decisions at certain points, but that only matters so long because the old guy does not stick around for long.
Yeah. And mechanically uneven, I would say, is very fair to give to Final Fantasy V. Yeah. I will say also in terms of character stuff is that, like, you know, my personal favorite character of the game is Ferris. Ferris is really cool. Ferris does suffer from being the
gender
writing and also just the character of the secret princess. Again, to bring back Zelda, Tetra from Wind Waker. Yeah. Very similar issue of, when we put you into princess mode, we kind of try to undo your actual character a bit. Not as bad with Ferris. Ferris does still kind of have the
it's-
moments of like, no, I'm still a fucking pirate. Fuck you. But
Part of the reason that also works for me is because like it is portrayed in a way that it's a role she isn't comfortable with, and she breaks out of it pretty regularly. Like,
yeah, it's a thing of just it's
lady.
not a lady with a lady brain. Yeah. It's definitely
like,
kind of like wonky, but like I still think Ferris is really well written. Is kind of thing of like for what she is.
And like Bart's has some depth. I think it's not super surface level, but like a lot of you can infer that a lot of his freewheeling adventuring and his having no ties to anybody is partially because he doesn't have any family.
Yeah, it's a thing of like Bart's is very much shonen protagonist.txt in some ways, like the shonen protagonist of that time, not modern,
to make him interesting.
But there's enough going on. There's enough going on there to be all like, yeah, you can see the shape of Bart's as a character. It's a little more. It's a little more three-dimensional than you might think.
I'm not gonna say that they're the most complex characters in the world because they aren't, but they've got enough going on.
Yeah, and it also benefits from like
as much as they need for this kind of.
And I think
big heroic story.
It benefits from that there is enough characters that recur throughout the game that have just about that much depth to them that it sort of makes up for each one not having more depth. You know?
Yeah.
I think because like the main party is not a super deep party, super deep characters as like some later Final Fantasies might be. But also, there's also like Sid and Mid. There's Gilgamesh, who's got shockingly quite a bit going on with him, and a whole little arc he goes on that's really fun and made him a very popular character for the rest of the series.
Memorable, genuinely like kind of moving in his final.
If
you do everything with him.
Yeah, if you get to experience the full arc of Gilgamesh in 5, it's no wonder that he became a recurring character for the entire series. You know,
there's a lot there. Like and like almost every important NPC has like at least one moment, partially because like. 5's a really good comedy too, and like a lot of the characters they don't necessarily have dramatic depth. They have really good comedic.
5 is definitely the most comedy focused one of the series so far.
I don't think anybody has just one joke, you know?
Yeah,
and I think that helps a lot.
Yeah, even the wise turtle sage character gets to be very fun and funny, and have some he doesn't have a whole lot of depth to him either, but he gets to be around and be a presence in a fun way, you know. He gets to have a little bit of a back and forth between like the main character of the game and also the villain, and there's enough going on with the whole like named cast of the game that it makes up for any sort of shallowness of each individual character.
100%. I fully agree.
I think any character
again. God damn.
Just any character who has enough presence to have some depth in that game has a little bit of depth. There's no fully flat, shallow character that I can think of the ones who are fully named. You know.
And honestly, we probably couldn't think of them because they probably aren't that.
True, that's fair. That's fair.
God damn it, Billy.
We're both getting owned on stream. We're both getting owned on stream tonight. It's just how it is. We haven't even gotten to the game yet. All right, and finally, the most recent one. I think the one that is kind of the one that I kind of was worried. Kind of like one of the more interesting things about this whole project now of just like, hey, these games have. My whole point of doing this project is that these games have a lot of opinions online, and I want to see how I feel about them and how if my feelings differ from others. Initially just kind of thinking about like, I want to see if I like FF8, even though a lot of people don't like FF8 online. And now we've come to the point of, I did not really like FF6, and people online really like FF6.
So I wouldn't put 6 below the after years.
No, definitely not. It's in this area for me. I'm not sure where.
100%. God damn it! 100% in that area.
You just gotta live with it. You just gotta accept it. You gotta accept it.
110% in that area. Here's the thing. I think I would have to give it at least being better than Mystic Quest. Because, like, it mechanically works all right, and I feel like there were high enough highs in certain places that I am willing to say that the lows weren't so low that I'd put it below Mystic Quest.
Yeah, no, I think I overall would put it.
I don't think I can put it over FF2. I don't think I can. I think I cared more about the characters in FF2.
I think that's fair. I'm not sure if I fully agree, but I'm not placing it down just yet.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think overall, I did like FF6. I don't dislike FF6, but in the same way, I don't dislike FF2. I still liked FF2 overall. I think was kind of, though it's just kind of the weakest one. There has to be in terms of if we're doing ranking, there has to be low. There has to be ones near at the bottom. You know, that's just how it is. But
I don't know if I liked FF6.
You know what? That's fair.
I don't know if I liked it.
That's fair. I guess I'm being generous. Also,
I liked moments in FF6. That doesn't mean I like it.
That's true. I was gonna say that I think that the final bit of the very end of FF6 did a lot of heavy lifting at the end to sort of bump it up from where I was initially at, where it would definitely be below 2. I do think though that like the second and third acts as a whole had a lot of low points for me.
Yeah,
that's kind of the big problem is that
so like a lot of my problems are they wanted to convince us that there was a world that they were building here, and they never really did it. They never really did the work. There were too many characters, and if we're talking shallow characters, I think most of the cast is really, really shallow.
Very shallow.
There are a couple of characters who get big stuff. I'd say Setzer is the big one.
Yeah,
Locke
that's what
gets
I think.
some, but it does not make him look good.
Yeah, that's the thing I was going to talk about. I was going to say is that, like, in the subject of characters having depth, my problem with that is they play with giving the characters depth, but then they I think almost every time they fumbled it. They fumbled it really badly.
Yep.
I think that there was a point early on, Act 1, everything up through like going to the capital, the opera house, going to the capital. I liked FF6 a lot at that time. I liked FF6 up through like the opera house and the imperial capital. You know, that was all a good game. And then then the second act started. We stopped having moments with the characters themselves where it was just like anybody, it was just like make your party and anybody could be part of this scene and anybody could be talking right now. Who knows who knows, up to you, I guess. And it's also it's the thing of like the end of Act 1 is this developing like relationship kind of thing of between Locke and Celis that at that time I thought they were okay. It's like this kind of
doing an interesting job.
It was doing an interesting job. It's not fully there yet, but we're early in the game. They could go somewhere with it, and then it just kind of stopped. The next
take Celis's character too.
Yeah, that's the thing that I was thinking about. I was thinking about this earlier before the stream when I was thinking about like talk about that we were gonna do. Is just that like Celis when she leaves the party in the capital, and Celis when she comes back later feel like two very different characters.
100. I said it
It's
again.
okay.
100%.
It's okay. You have to
I
accept
know.
it.
I
You have
need to
accept
stop.
it.
I need to stop fixating on it. It's a tick. It's a vocal tick. I'm just gonna have to. It's a charm point.
I do it all the time. Yeah, it's a charm point. Look at my small dragon friend. They're so
I'm
charming.
So charming.
They have so many charm points.
So charming.
But yeah.
Other thing I would say, none of the villains show up enough.
No. The Emperor is really all over the place when he shows up.
Barely a character.
Kefka
we know that he wants power. That's about it.
Yeah.
General Leo shows up all twice, and the second time he dies.
Yeah, and he's very exonerated as like the second time he shows, like there's a little hint of it, like, oh, he's the one that's like the honorable one. General Leo is the blueprint for Gaius von Balsar.
And Gaius has more going on.
That's what I was. No. I was gonna say. No. That's what I'm saying. Leo is Gaius von Balsar without any of the things that actually make me kind of like Gaius von Balsar. Gaius von Balsar is a piece of shit who does not deserve the status of like.
And we don't like him that much.
No, yeah, and you should. I feel weird about you being horny for him, but I'm not gonna tell you not to do that. Not you. I'm talking about just in a general you here.
Yeah. There is enough where I can understand why somebody would care about him.
Yeah.
And
I think that Leo is them trying to do that for the first time, and it does not work for me.
It doesn't work in any way, shape, or form. Kefka also,
Kefka has, like...
Speaking of characters that feel completely different after they show up after a while, when he shows up after, the Espers start going everywhere and all that, he's suddenly way more powerful than he's been portrayed to be up until that point. And not in a way that feels like, oh my god, he's been hiding all of this strength. It feels like, okay, why is this happening?
Yeah.
He's just vaporizing Espers left and right to the point where it makes Gestal's entire gambit of having you lead him to the Espers feel absurd. Kefka could just take care of this on his own in 5 seconds, and we'd be done.
I would say, of the entire cast of the game, heroes, villains, side characters, Kefka is the most a character. Kefka is the most developed and present, and he still feels really shallow.
I'm gonna say straight up that the super soldier bad, his hubris leads him to slipping the leash. Where does Kefka's mindset relating to him becoming a super soldier ever actually come up in the text of the game that we saw?
Yeah,
I remember reading about Kefka and seeing all this stuff mentioning, oh, he got this treatment, but it went wrong and it drove him mad.
It's possible that there's some side thing too. That's another problem with the game, is that it's so fucking big, and it's so fucking big, and I feel like we might have missed so much in the end.
Yeah, we might have missed the vital thing to make us care about Kefka as a character.
Exactly. I don't know a lot about 9, but I do know that Kuja is that, but much more in depth and better. I think, from what I've heard, I think that it's. Kefka just doesn't have. We don't get to see interiority with Kefka. That's the problem. Kefka has no interiority, and so we don't know. We don't really have a motive for Kefka. He just,
He just hates hope.
Yeah, he really is the Joker.
He's the Joker. He's just the Joker.
He's the Joker, baby.
He's the Joker.
Without the actual depth of the Joker as a character overall, it's just he's specific incarnations of the Joker from recent stuff, but the Joker as a whole, as a character in comics, has a lot of depth. There's a lot to the Joker that we know, but that's from years and years of different things all together and different canons coming together and sort of mishmashing. And so that's obviously more than one game can do, but still, there is just no interiority to him in a way that is interesting.
I think he's written in a fun way, at least.
Yeah,
I love reading his lines.
He's very fun. That's the thing. That's why he is memorable. He's a very memorable character. He's got a lot of stuff that he does and a lot of traits and ticks to him. But just where he slots into the plot feels kind of ham-fisted.
As an aside, worst Sid we've had so far?
Say thank you, Ted.
Is that
Oh
fair
yeah,
to
worst
say?
worst Sid we had so far. God,
Ted
that's the other
Woolsey
thing.
saved a lot of this.
That
game.
is the thing. That's the other thing I want to say about Celeste's character. Of just God, the thing with her, like just in the ruined world, having this weird child regression moment of like, like calling him like Grampy or Grandpa or whatever, like is so fucking weird and out of nowhere.
So weird.
Like that's the other thing about this game.
I feel like
just,
that was just Ted working with the script. I don't know.
I do think like we touched a little bit on with 5.
It felt like that should have been Terra, right?
Maybe, yeah.
Like that should have been Terra.
Yeah, that could have been Terra.
It would have made so much more sense. Like again, I
she's looking for family and meaning and such, and she's going to be
family and meaning. She was established as the main character. Would make sense to center back in on her at that.
No,
point.
instead we got to have this weird arc of her becoming a surrogate mother of a whole village of children, and this is the other thing I was gonna say is like we touched a little bit on it with 5 of them being kind of weird with Lena and Ferris, and FF6 is so fucking weird about women.
It's so weird about women.
I
think the only named women were in the party too, right?
No, there was also Locke's dead girlfriend.
Oh yeah, Locke's dead girlfriend, but
that was which is also them being weird about women.
Setzer's dead girlfriend.
True.
Who's more interesting, but is still a dead girlfriend.
She, at least in the moment we saw her, was a character with stuff going on other than Setzer. You know, like we saw her. Opera Lady is like an implied character, I guess.
Did she have a name? I guess she did.
There was a name given for her, but we don't.
I don't think
she's not a
we
character.
ever like. Yeah, she didn't really say anything.
She didn't show up.
Oh,
she wasn't there.
Like,
yeah,
we saw her briefly, didn't we? Or might be like, oh man, she looks just like Celes. Or did they just say that she?
Did Cyan's wife get named? I don't think she did.
I think she did get named. It was like
Maybe?
Rachel. I think she was Rachel.
I'm sure we can look it up.
Or wait, no, his wife. I think she got named. I don't know. Let me check. I was mixing up with Locke's dead girl. Elaine, that's it. Yeah, Elaine had a name. But her entire character is I'm a good wife and you did fine by us, CN, don't feel bad.
Yeah.
You, me, and your son are dead.
And that's fine. That's fine on its own.
That's fine on its own. It adds up when every single female character is like this, and Celes didn't start like this, but she becomes like this.
Yeah. And but it's also just, and it's not even like, it's the whole thing of just like, even outside of the women being weird about women, it's just like, none of the guys really have development. Like, Cyan gets the most. Cyan really gets the most out of the main party besides Locke, maybe.
Yeah, probably.
Just because they've made his side quest so extensive.
Cyan, yeah, probably gets the most. Setzer's second.
Yeah, Setzer, I think, is second in terms
third?
of quality. He doesn't get a lot, but it's much higher quality what he gets.
And then Locke gets the most, but it's all bad.
It's all bad. It's bad. It's where it goes is weird, and it's also just kind of like half baked. I feel it's very half baked in what it's actually doing there. It's just kind of Locke is weird. Locke has a hard time letting go. That's it.
Gal's big character moment feels more like it's more about Sabin than it is about him.
It's about Sabin, but it's also just a weird comedy scene. It's just a full weird comedy scene rather than like any sort of. Like I thought it was going to be an interesting thing of like Sabin dealing with his own issues with his parents because he ran away from being a prince.
He never confronts it, not directly anyway. And that sort of arc you need to spell out in a game like that. You can't just have it be implied.
That's kind of thing. It's like there's so much. There's too much of 6 that's implied.
I said it. I said it at the time. I think that is the thing about FF6. There's a lot of interesting things implied by FF6, and if you, the player, say if you're playing this as a young kid and your heart is full of wonder and imagination. I think you're likely to bring a lot to the game.
Yeah, and you're going from FF.
Is there there.
Yeah, and you're going from FF1 to FF4 to FF6 is also and if you've gone through the series so far and as a young teenager, because let's be real, the obsession with 6 is definitely a much more outside of Japan feeling. Japan has always kind of seemed like it puts 5 and 3 higher in terms of like how popularity over there. From everything I've heard, is 5 and 3 have much more like influence.
I feel like you'd know better than I would.
From what I've heard, I can't. I know. Partially, it's also like 3 is clearly like a huge influence on 14. So it's clearly got 3 is huge within internally at least. And I think I've always heard that 5 is really popular in Japan, but I don't know. I'm not going to say more on that. Because I don't know for sure. Yeah, 7 is going to have an even bigger reputation for a varied and deeply written cast, but it also has "Sorry We Did a Terrorism" Barrett. Yeah, 7 has definitely, from what 7 has a bit of unearned reputation until the remake has done a lot of work to sort of bring that into the actual story again in a way that I think makes up for it. That's the thing. I mentioned it while we were playing 6. 6 is one that, like, while my overall opinion is that no game needs to be remade, remakes are not necessary. Things should, very relevant to other recent games, Silent Hill, but
remakes should be available in their original form.
They should be available in their original form for sure, as high quality as they can be, and also just like a remake can accomplish certain goals. I think 7 remake. They should remake FF16. God.
Try again.
Yeah, try again. Do. But yeah, it's like
I'm really curious to see 16. I feel like I'm gonna like it more than the average.
Me
but
too,
I also
probably.
feel like I want to see its flaws in action.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. But I will say it's the thing of like I mentioned this one time during the streams of Final Fantasy VI of just like, while I don't think any game needs to be remade, remakes can have a certain effect, can have a certain purpose, and do some good. Like, I think while Live a Live is a game that I think is really good, even in its original form, and didn't need to be remade, I think the remake is a very good touch up to it in a way that makes it, that really helps it without hurting the experience. I think Final Fantasy VI could use that kind of. Not maybe even more than that.
An extensive one. I think it could be an extensive one.
I think Final Fantasy VI could have something almost on the level of the Final Fantasy VII remake that would benefit it a lot.
I completely agree.
Yeah, the combat in 16 is pretty basic kind of character action type stuff. But yeah, but I don't know. Well, I'll get to 16. I promise.
We'll have to get
we played a little bit of it. We're gonna have to pick up and see if we can pick up where we were last time after like half a year now. Oh god. Not gonna think about it.
Don't think about it.
Sub-Automata is probably accurate. Yeah, like Sub-Automata, but like it's also like being worse than like some of the best stuff doesn't necessarily mean isn't necessarily bad for me, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, I'm putting it down. I think FF6 of the main number games is my least favorite so far.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I agree. I would put it below FF2. I would give it at least better than Mystic Quest.
Yeah,
because it is a game that functions and has some amount of depth.
It's just...
Yeah, I think that's fair about Automata. Every time I've played Automata, I can't super get into its action.
That's fair. You're right. You're right. That's the point. I get that's the point you were making, but like still.
Yeah, here's the thing though. Sometimes if an action RPG system is jankier and not quite as polished, I like it more. It's weird how that happens, but it does.
But yeah,
I can see a world where I like 16.
I will say what little we played of 16 so far, I was enjoying it, and we also just got the Garuda stuff, which I think added more to it in a way that I liked. So yeah, that's fair. For
me, it's definitely a bell curve.
Yeah. My feelings on the gameplay of FF16 are not developed yet. Is where I'm standing at here.
Yeah.
I have not played. I do not fully have a feeling about it. I am also, this is coming from someone who has played some of the best. I'm a big fan of DMC5, which is, I think, one of, if not the best character action games, gameplay wise, there's ever been. And Bayonetta 2 also. Like, I have I know the high bars. But yeah. That's the Final Fantasy games we played so far. And how we feel about them.
Time to move into 3 dimensions.
Yep, nearly 2 hours into the stream.
Look, we really needed to talk about how bad FF6 is.
Yeah,
again.
we needed to. Look, this felt like a good break
When
point
we
to talk
weren't
about it because
extremely tired.
we're moving into the time where each of these games is going to be taking longer and longer to get through, and there's going to be more to what each game is.
Okay, so
Yeah,
as
like
we
you're saying,
move
that
ahead-
what could be is an important thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, that's the wrong screen to hit F11 on.